Hello, everyone. Hi. Welcome. Happy Friday. Good evening. I'll give you guys a moment to come on in. And as per usual, where are you guys joining me from today? I can recognize some of the names. I'm coming to you live from Saskatchewan, so here in Regina. Nice Friday evening. It's a little overcast outside, but we've been having summer has finally arrived here, so we've had a fairly colder start to the summer, or what's supposed to be summer, but I think summer has finally arrived. It has been nice, and it gets really hot here though during the summer, so it has been hot. So I see, all right, Red Deer, Alberta, awesome. Jamaica. Welcome. So today I am gonna talk briefly gifted island child. Not sure who's that. Yeah, so today I'm going to talk briefly about express entry. If you guys have been following along, if you've been following our page, which I hope you have been, make sure that you follow and you turn on your notifications so you don't miss anything. But if you have been, you would have seen that we've been posting a lot about, the happenings over the past month. It's been a very, very active month for express entry. So I will be talking a little bit about express entry this evening, and then we'll wrap up with some questions. All right. So just hold your questions if you have them, or you can put them in the you can drop your question maybe closer towards the end. I'll tell you when you can ask some questions, but I will be talking a little bit about express entry. So most of you may know that express entry is like Canada's flagship immigration system, and it's one of the primary systems that the federal government, so that's the government of Canada, uses to welcome permanent residents into Canada. So it's a system that manages applications for permanent residents. Okay, so if you're looking at coming to Canada, it may be one of the first things that you come across or encounter. It's not the only way to come to Canada. So there are many different ways, many different programs, many different pathways. I can definitely say though, over the last year plus, it has become over a year now, it has become even more competitive. There's even more interest in coming to Canada, and Canada has had, as they reported, I think it was back in March, the first quarter of this year, they reported that we had over 2.6 million temporary residents, or 2.8, somewhere there, temporary residents who are in Canada currently, right? And so if you are here, whether as an international student, so whether you're a student, so you're on a study permit, or you're a temporary foreign worker, maybe you're on a work permit, if you're a visitor, you would be counted in that number. And then I would imagine that a lot of you may be looking at making that transition from being a temporary resident to being a permanent resident, right? So express entry, the express entry system, the programs that are managed in express entry may be one of those pathways, right? And it is becoming a lot more competitive, like I said. So you have to make sure that you have a plan and you have a backup to that plan, right? So you need to know what program you're going to be applying for whenever that time comes for you to transition to being a permanent resident, or even if you're outside Canada, like what's the plan? And you know, what if that plan doesn't work out? What's your alternate plan? So those are some of the things that you want to think about when you're, and don't get, you know, you might have maybe a year remaining on your work permit or so. It's not time to be comfortable. So if you're a temporary resident, you definitely want to be reviewing your options. Even if you're not at the place right now where you think you can apply, you want to know what your options are for when you are ready or will be ready to apply, right? So you can start getting certain things in place. And so that is where usually I would recommend to do a consultation. That's where the consultation comes in, right? When you want to start planning your next step or that pathway to PR. So I'd like to know from all of us here, and even if you're joining for the replay, I want to do a quick survey of who is in the pool. Are you in the Express Entry pool currently? What is your score if you're in the pool? Did you receive an invitation to apply recently? We've had a few clients. Remember I said this has been a very active month. So over 19,000 invitations to apply were issued in July. That's very significant. Okay, so NK says not yet. Alex 479. Okay. 479. I mean, maybe a few years ago that would have been like a really great score. Not that it's a bad score, but it's just been, you know, competitive right now in the pool. All right, so the draws, I'll go back through the draws that we had this month. So it started July 2nd, and of course the month isn't done yet. We may have additional draws. They've been very IRCC has been working really hard behind the scenes with these draws. So we had a provincial nominee draw that happened on July 2nd, and they drew 920 applicants. So 920 invitations to apply were issued. The cutoff score was 739. It's a PNP, so we expect it to be high, right? Then there was a trades occupations draw, 1,800 invitations were sent out for that. That was 436, and even for trades occupations draw, I think that was high, because generally the trades draws, you'll see a lower cutoff score generally for trades occupations. Then they had another draw. So this one was a healthcare occupations draw. So these are all like the trades and the healthcare. These are what we call category-based draws. And so Express Entry, well, the government of Canada instituted these new things that would have started about a year ago. They announced those, that they would be introducing category-based invitations. And if you look back at the history of Express Entry draws over the last little bit, most of them have been exactly that, right? So the healthcare ones are very popular. So they had a healthcare draw on July 5th. 3,750 invitations were sent out. And then we had, within the space of about 10 days, 2 French draws. So it shows that there is great emphasis being placed on applicants in the pool who are French speaking. Then we had 2 French draws. We had another PNP draw on the 16th, and then we had a Canadian Experience class draw. So the Canadian Experience draw, the Canadian Experience class draw, that was the largest one. That was 6,300 invitations, and that represented, so with Canadian Experience, that will represent those in the pool who have worked in Canada for at least 1 year. So you have at least 1 year of Canadian experience within the last 3 years, right? So that would be how you qualify for the Canadian Experience class program. It's a great program for those who are former international students. So if you're a former international student with maybe you're on your postgrad work permit, you want to be careful about the work experience that you're accumulating, because only certain types of work experience will allow you to qualify for this particular program. It's a really great pathway for that. Or if you're just a temporary foreign worker, maybe you were on an open work permit or even a closed work permit. It just depends on the knock of the job that you were doing. That would help you to be qualified for this. You'll find with the Canadian Experience class, one thing that's exempt is that one benefit would be the fact that you are exempted from meeting the proof of funds requirement if you're applying under the Canadian Experience class, right? So that was the largest of all the draws that happened in the past month, and very significant. The score was still high, it's 515, and it also tells you that if they drew 6,300 candidates and the score is still so high, it just tells you that there are a number of applicants in the pool who are in Canada and who have Canadian work experience, right? And the fact that the cutoff scores generally are that high tells you a lot, right? So you can see really what the composition of the pool is. For those who are outside Canada, this is your opportunity to make use of the category-based draws, especially if you work in certain occupations. So for example, we've had a number of clients who were drawn under the healthcare draws. And it's not just limited to express entry. Ontario, right? Ontario is one of those provinces that have been very active with their PNP. So they have been drawing a lot from the express entry pool through their human capital priorities stream. So they also did a huge draw just yesterday where they invited a number of healthcare NOCs, so applicants in the express entry pool who are within a particular score range and who have work experience in certain healthcare NOCs. So if you are outside Canada and you want to apply through the express entry system, you will be in a good position if you are within one of the categories that they are focusing on. Again, it doesn't mean that if you're not in any of these categories that you won't be invited or you won't have an opportunity. It's just that your chances are going to be higher if you are in one of the healthcare occupations that are being drawn. And there is a long list. I mean, you have nurses, you have dentists, you have vets, you have paramedic occupations, you have licensed practical nurses. There's quite a bit. You have occupational therapists, nurses aides, right? Massage therapists. So quite a long list. And we have certain technicians that work in like medical radiation, for example, medical labs. So those are some of the occupations that would fall under this healthcare category. One of the main requirements, though, for you to be considered under these category-based draws, that you must have had recent experience. So recent meaning within the last few years before the draws. So 3 years at least. So you must have had recent experience. Recent meaning within the last 3 years, at least 6 months of work experience, continuous work experience in the particular healthcare occupation that is included in the healthcare category. So at least 6. So if you're a nurse or if you're a licensed practical nurse, for example, you must have 6 months of work experience continuously. So for a continuous 6 months period, and not necessarily with the same employer, but at least as long as there is no break in your employment for 6 months, and that work experience was accumulated within 3 years before you were drawn, right? So that's really the main requirement for some of these categories. And then of course with the French draws, it's essentially having French language proficiency, being able to get NCLC 7 in a French language test. And generally, it's the French test is going to be similar to the English test. It will test your reading, writing, listening, and speaking of French. Okay, and so those are gonna be very good to know, to be a part of if you can. There are some candidates right now who are actually learning French as another way to help to make their profiles more attractive. But if you are in the pool right now and maybe your score is not as high, you may want to have your profile reviewed to ensure you are claiming all the points that you should be getting. I've done a number of consultations in recent times, and those are some of the things that we're finding out, right? You have folks in the pool who their scores are at a with a certain score, and then when we review, realize that their scores should be higher, right? There are some things that they should be claiming points for that they're not, or it's just not set up properly in the profile. So if you're in the pool, you want to ensure that your profile is, the score that you're seeing is actually accurate. And then you don't want to just, sit around and wait for a draw to happen for you to be selected. You want to make sure that you are doing everything that you can to increase your score and increase your chances of being selected. You want to ensure that you are looking at other pathways. Are there other pathways outside of express entry that may be an option for you? So those are some of the things that you want to also explore if you're in the pool and there's no movement. Are there other pathways that can be explored? Other provincial nominee programs that maybe you can apply to, or is studying in Canada an option for you? Like, those are some of the questions that you may want to ask. And reach out to us. Go ahead and reach out to our team. You can send us an email, or you can visit our website, nccanadaimmigration.com, and complete the online pre-assessment, and we'll see how we can assist you. Another option for personalized guidance would be to go on our website and look at the different we have different consultation options available. So review the consultation options that are there and see which ones may suit you based on your situation. If you have received an ITA though, you don't want to play around with that ITA, so ITA meaning an invitation to apply. So if you've received an invitation to apply for express entry or even a provincial program, you want to make sure that that application is rock solid and there's no room for error. There's no room for error, not at this stage, right? So you want to ensure that your application is prepared properly and that documentation, forms, everything are in accordance with what IRCC will be expecting. And maybe we could do another live to talk about some of these things, like how do you package and prepare your applications and what are some of the things that you should look out for. But if you have an invitation, you definitely want to ensure that that application is soundproof, it's professionally reviewed to ensure that you're not missing anything. Because if your application, and I've seen a lot of this in recent times too, like if your application is sent off to IRCC, so one of the first things that IRCC will do, they complete a completeness check. So you will have a clerk who will review your application, and they're looking to see if this application is complete. Does it include all of the applicable documents and forms and so on? If they find that your application is not complete, it will be returned to you. And so if it was a case where you received an invitation to apply, for example, and your application is returned, you will have to start all over again. So, and there's no guarantee that you'll receive another invitation, right? So you want to ensure that you're not playing around with that. There are various areas in the application that, are prone to errors, and that you want to make sure that you have chosen the right knock code. Are your employment reference letters, are they suitable? Do they meet all of the requirements that IRCC has established? Are there any potential issues with your police clearance certificates? Like, those can also be problematic, right? Are you claiming all the points that you should, or is there anything that you have claimed points for that you should not have? Any inconsistencies with your information? If you had previously applied as a temporary resident, are you submitting any information that could lead to a misrepresentation finding with this new application? So are there anything that might not be consistent with what IRCC previously had for you? Are there anything that might cause you to be inadmissible potentially? You know, all of those things should be reviewed and highlighted in your application. So you would want that to be done, especially if you're doing it yourself. If you're doing it yourself, you definitely want it to be reviewed professionally. If you're not doing it yourself, you want to ensure that it's being done by a professional and somebody who has experience in doing all of that. And then, as I mentioned, if you're waiting for an ITA, you wanna ensure that don't just be waiting. You know, see what you can do to increase your score and increase your chances of being selected in a draw. Okay, so very, very important. If you're a permanent resident of Canada, amazing. Ensure that you don't do anything to jeopardize that status, and you're meeting all of your residency obligations. So there's an obligation that comes with being a permanent resident of Canada. And if you're outside Canada and you're looking to come to Canada, whether as a permanent resident or as a temporary resident, you want to explore all of the available options and then ensure that whichever way you decide to go, that application is compelling, it's complete, and it's positioned for success. All right, and those are some of the things that we can help with. Richard says, I submit my occupation and they didn't return my package. I'm not sure what you're saying there, Richard. Can you clarify that for me? All right, so now I'll take a couple of questions. I have about 10 minutes. Somebody's asking, what's the best course for IELTS? I don't have any particular course that I would promote or recommend. If you go on the IELTS website, you'll see that they have materials. They have materials that they have available for candidates that can help you with your preparation. And they also have like practice tests on there as well. They have one that is actually marked. So there's like an IELTS prep program that they have where you actually get to do a mock exam and they mark it. So those are some of the things that I am aware of, but I wouldn't be able to recommend any particular course. In fact, for IELTS, it's more so about preparation and I guess technique. But I wouldn't be able to recommend a particular course because most of the clients that we work with, they don't necessarily take a course for IELTS. They may get familiar with the exam and do some practice tests and so on. But if you go on their website, they do have recommendations for providers, you know, who do that. All right, let's see what else. I have a master's degree in labor relations, verified my result, have a job in payroll. How do I target provincial nomination? Are you in Canada or are you outside Canada? There are different provincial nomination program. They call them provincial nominee programs. There are different PNP programs, and they are available throughout the provinces in Canada, right? So what will have to happen is you would have to assess which ones you qualify for. There are some that are open to applicants in Canada, so tailored or targeted towards applicants who are in Canada who have previously worked or studied, whether in Canada or in that specific province. So they will all have their different eligibility requirements. And then there are others that might be more open, and it's available for applicants outside Canada to apply. So that evaluation would need to be done to determine which one might be most suited for you. And then if you are in Canada, we would have to look at which province you're in and whether it is that you would meet any of the requirements for the PNPs in your province, or what you can do to qualify if you haven't qualified as yet. So that's done in a consultation. For French, the CLB, somebody's asking what's the CLB level. You'll need CLB 7. It's called, for French, they call it NCLC. So that's level 7. How can I migrate to Canada from Jamaica? Well, it depends, I would say. There are a number of different programs, so it will just depend on you, the individual, what you may qualify for. You can visit our website, nccanadaimmigration.com. So that's nccanadaimmigration.com, and complete the pre-assessment there. We're actually having a webinar in about 2 weeks, so we will post that information so that those interested can also register to attend, and that might provide you with some additional details about possible programs. Do you think scores for general CEC will come down? Yes, that's a good one. Will it come down? I remember when I started, I said there are over 2.8 million temporary residents in Canada right now. And that's not just students, of course, and it's not just workers, like it's all temporary residents. So essentially those in Canada who are not Canadian citizens or permanent residents, right? And the government made an announcement earlier in the year that they plan to bring that, they represent about 6% of the population based on that number earlier this year. And their target is to bring that number down to about 5%. One of the strategies that, was floated around, I think even the minister had mentioned, alluded to it, which was, so one thing that they did encourage, they encouraged the provinces to start doing more domestic draws. And then they did say that at the federal level, they'll be doing more domestic draws. So I think on that premise, we can expect to see more Canadian experience class draws. With that, the scores may go down, but I don't expect them to go down significantly. Because at 6,300, the cutoff is 515. So it's still going to be high. Even if it goes below 500, it may go in the 490s, but I don't see it going below that for the Canadian experience class anytime soon. I want to reach out for a consultation to get in the pool. Yeah, so just go to our Instagram bio and you'll see a link where you can schedule a consultation. How can you join the pool? Yeah, that's gonna be a long one. What you can do to learn more about, express entry, joining the pool, just complete the pre-assessment on our website, or watch out for the registration link to the webinar that we're gonna have in about 2 weeks, and then you can attend to learn more. How can I move from a visitor to study permit? Okay. So generally, if you are in Canada and you are a visitor and you don't have a relative in Canada who is a work permit holder, so maybe like a spouse, for example, that's that's a work permit or study permit holder, you cannot apply for a study permit from inside Canada. That application would have to be sent or made outside Canada. But it is definitely possible. It's generally studying in Canada is, whether you're inside or outside, it's going to be the same two-step process. One is getting accepted into a program in Canada. And then the second step will be applying for the study permit. So your first step is going to be program acceptance, or obtaining a letter of acceptance from a designated learning institution in Canada. And then the second step would be the study permit. But for something like that, for help with that, you would have to maybe schedule a study in Canada consultation, and we can assist you further. With that, we are able to also help you to get into an institution, or can provide you with like a short list of different programs that you can explore. How can I migrate to Canada without a skill? Honestly, if you're not skilled, you're not going to be one of the primary targets for Canada right now. But the best way to come to Canada, as you know, if as someone that might be unskilled, your best way to come to Canada is going to be to obtain a job. And you will find a lot of LMIA jobs that are targeted towards, you know, unskilled workers, because guess what, there are jobs in Canada that are either in that category, like that unskilled category, that employers, they do need workers for. So that would be your best way to come to Canada. It's going to be obtaining a job. If you're refused a visa, how soon can I apply? And also, do I need to do the biometrics again? There's no waiting period, but you don't just want to, you know, just reapply for reapplying's sake. You want to figure out what went wrong in the previous application and what should be addressed, what concerns the officer had. You would get, when you are refused an application, you're going to get like a generic, you know, refusal letter. That doesn't really tell you why the application was refused. It's, as I said, it's generic. So the officer basically checks off some boxes, right? And it's going to be the same refusal letter that somebody would get if they applied for a study permit, work permit. And in your case, if you applied for a visitor visa, it's the same generic refusal letter. So what you would need to do is to find out what were the reasons for refusal before attempting to reapply, because chances are, if you just reapply again, they would refuse it again, right? And the more time that happens, the more difficult it's going to be for you to become successful with that application. So you definitely want to see what the reasons for refusals are. What I would recommend is maybe send us a message or go on the website. We have a section on our website called Visa Refusal Management. You can read more there about Visa Refusal Management Service, and that's where we contact IRCC on your behalf. So we will request your case notes essentially, and we review them with you, and then we can strategize on how to go about addressing the concerns of the officer. Generally, there are different ways to do that. So it can be reapplying, it can be asking for reconsideration, it can be asking for a leave for judicial review, right? So there are different ways to address the refusal, but it would just depend on what is the reason, what we find out from making that request. A judicial review, for example, is going to be like the last resort, right? It just depends on what the reasons for refusal are. Okay, I think does having a visa make the process of becoming a resident easier? I can't say that it does. It does not. it might, the way I see it helping is maybe it will allow you to come and visit Canada before, so you will see if it's really a place that you'll want to live and stay permanently, but it doesn't really help in any other way for you to obtain permanent residency. If your study permit is refused, can it be appealed? It would be the same response I just gave for the visa refusal. So that's where the visa refusal management comes in. Very, very important. Very important. Click the link in the Instagram bio. I think there's a link there that talks about visa refusal, or just go on the website and you will see a section there for visa refusal management. And then when you said, where is it? So you mentioned, can it be appealed? The appeal would come in two forms, whether it is a request for reconsideration or applying for a judicial review. So that's where it would come in. But it will just depend on the reasons for refusal. So Nikki, you were talking about going in the pool with a registered business in Canada. Yeah, I would have to look at that further, because generally, for example, for the Canadian experience class, you cannot be self-employed in Canada. So I will have to look at your specific situation. There are some instances where you can though, but it might just be under a different class in the pool. Okay, what else? Can I get a LMIA if I register business in Canada? If it's a registered legal business, you possibly could, but remember, with an LMIA, there are, just like there are requirements for applicants to meet, there are requirements that employers must meet. So it all depends on how long that business has been registered, what is your activity, where are you located, you know, do you have anyone on payroll, or, you know, those are some of the questions that I would have to ask you to really advise about whether you could get an LMIA. But yeah, any business, really, most businesses can, but not everyone may qualify. All right, guys, so lots of questions today. I think I touched on most of them. What's the cost for a consultation? Visit the link in the bio. We have different types of consultations. If your spouse has been inadmissible, can you apply for PR? That sounds like it would be a complex application. I wouldn't be able to talk about inadmissibility here. So for that, you definitely need a consultation. I would have to find out the nature of what has happened and how it can be addressed. Can my daughter... Oh, I see what you're asking. Generally, you cannot sponsor a sibling, so I would say no. There are some situations where there will be so there's always the rules, right? And then there will be some situations that might be an exemption to the rule. So, you know, generally, no, you cannot sponsor a sibling, but there might be certain exemptions to the rule that may apply, but I will have to look at your situation further to advise. For NOC code 1220, accounting technicians, are they regularly selected? I see where they're on the list for Ontario on July 16th. So generally for express entry, right? that knock would not be among any of the category, those identified as part of category-based draws, right? But for other types of draws, it's possible. We just don't know what knock codes are being drawn in the general draws. For Ontario, their human capital priority stream usually includes a wide range of knocks. So it's possible for Ontario. It's also possible for other provinces. So I've seen that knock drawn in other PNPs from within the express entry pool. But I can't say that it's going to be a priority occupation for express entry. It's not currently, but it might be for the provinces, because from a provincial standpoint, it's based on the needs of that particular province and what occupations they're trying to get candidates in, based on the labor market needs of that province. So it will vary by province. So it's not, I can't say it's like a blanket thing where it will be included in one province or not, because their priorities change all the time. But I've seen it drawn for different provinces. I think I'm going to wrap up here, guys. Okay, so you're a business visitor is what I'm getting from what you're saying there. And you've been here for 4 months. Had gotten a visitor visa to New Zealand. Can I go and come back since I'm only 4 months here? As long as your visa is valid, you can always leave and re-enter Canada. So as long as your TRV, so that temporary resident visa that you would have gotten to do your business travels, as long as it's still valid when you leave, then yes, you could re-enter Canada. And just remember that you being able to re-enter Canada is at the discretion of the Canada Border Services officer that you will encounter at the port of entry. So it's always at their discretion if they have any reasons to refuse your entry, right? So it's never guaranteed that you'll be allowed to enter Canada. But I mean, if you have a valid visa, if it's still valid after you've left, then you could re-enter with a valid visa. Just be prepared to answer any questions that may be asked by the Border Services officer. All right. And I think that's all I have time for, guys, today. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining. Yeah, I think I've answered most of your questions. Someone says, I love Canada, such a clean and diversified country. Yeah, Canada is, it's something to experience. So even if you never come as a permanent resident to live permanently in the country, it's definitely worth even a visit. You'll find that visiting the different provinces will almost feel like you're in a different country. I always say that. You'll go to Ontario, and your experience in Ontario will totally be different from your experience like here in Saskatchewan. Completely different. So definitely lots to do and lots to see in Canada for sure. Well, guys, thank you for joining this evening. And if you have questions, send us a DM. And like I said, for some of you that may have had a more complex situation, what I would encourage you to do is to visit our website. You can look at the consultation options that are available, and you can, choose accordingly based on what's happening in your specific situation. Some of you based on the complex nature of your situation, you definitely need to get some sort of professional guidance or advice before going forward. And especially if you have a previous refusal, it means that your case is even more risky and you would be at risk of having a second or a third refusal. I just had one success story of a client who they applied. So a client of ours who's in Canada and wanted the spouse to come here. They applied 3 times. So they applied for work permits, they applied for visitors visas, not granted. And so they came and we worked tirelessly on that application, reviewing the previous applications to see what happened. Same thing I mentioned, getting the case notes for the application. So once there's a refusal, we definitely want to get your notes from immigration to see what's going on. And so we use that information to really strategize and work on this new application. And we also asked the officer, based on the notes that they made and the concerns that they had, one of the things that we did was to ask the officer, hey, if you have if there are issues that you're not able to have addressed in this application, have the candidate do an interview, right? So those are some of the strategies that we can use, and we prep the applicant too, if should that be requested. We actually had one that was requested, so it was actually 2 situations. So one, the officer did request the interview just as we'd asked, because they kept refusing the application when the client was doing it themselves. And so you want, when you do your application DIY, sometimes you miss out on having someone that's able to work with you and advocate on your behalf. And I've seen it a lot of times. So sometimes clients will submit their application themselves and then it's just a refusal. No explanation, nothing, right? Sometimes the officer, it appears that they don't even look at the application. So we have been able to advocate for these 2 clients. One, they requested an interview for which we prepped the client. And then a few weeks later, there it was, an approval. And our client, she literally cried, because this has been something that they've been trying to work on for a very long time, right? And then the second one, they did not request an interview or anything like that. They, based on the submission that was presented, so like I said, we worked tirelessly on that application. We'll ask for a lot of documents because we have to build a strong case for you, right? And so we advocated on behalf of the applicant. They took a little while to respond, and so we had to go back to them to say, hey, this application was submitted and this is what we're expecting. So we had to nudge them. So we had to send IRCC a nudge even after sending the application. After that nudge, the response that we got was approved. So the application was approved. And this is after 3 failed attempts by the client to do it themselves. And sometimes when you do it yourself and you're refused, especially if you're refused multiple times, you make it really hard for even when you're supposed to get help. It makes it a very, very difficult situation sometimes to try to undo some of what has been done. So I would definitely encourage, especially for those complex cases, ensure that you get support with your application. And even if it's not complex, some very minute and small things, like there was a client whose application was, when they did it, it was returned because of the date on their police clearance. Just the date on the police clearance resulted in the application being returned to them. All right, so guys, do not take it for granted. That's why we're here. We're here to help you on that journey to Canada or to remain in Canada. And immigration can be a very complex process. Don't do it alone. Get the support that you need, whether it is someone to review the application, or someone to guide you through the process, or someone to do it on your behalf completely, all 3 of which we can assist with. All right, so that's my final word that I'll leave with you guys based on that last comment. and take care. Have a great weekend. Reach out to us, send us a DM if you have additional questions. You can email admin@nccanadaimmigration.com, and we'll take it from there. All right, guys, have a blessed weekend, and I'll catch up with you guys next week.